Okay, now we're going to talk about combining or adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing. So notice if we have a problem with different kinds of operations. Notice we've got some multiply and addition instead of just adding and subtracting or multiplying and dividing. We could get different answers. Get my pen. Depending on the order we do the operations. If we did the multiplication first, right, we'd get 6 plus 5, which is 11. But if we did the adding first, we'd get 2 times 8, which is 16. So we can't get two different answers to the exact same equation. This tells us that we must always use, everybody always has to agree and do the operations in the same order. So the acronym Pemdas can be used to help you remember the order of operations. If you need help remembering the acronym, you can think of Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. It's crazy how our brain works. I mean, I don't even have an Aunt Sally. But it's something silly and meaningless, we can remember it. But if I tried to memorize parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, right, that would take a lot of effort. But Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally seems a lot easier. Now, a couple of things we have to remember. So if I remember either PEMDAS or Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally, the P is for parentheses. The E is for exponent. The M is for multiplication. The D for division. A for adding. S for subtraction. But what most people fail to recognize is that my dear and Aunt Sally are hooked together. Okay? In other words, we're going to go through and we're going to do every single parenthesis and get rid of parentheses. Then we're going to do everything that has an exponent on it. But then we are not going to go through and do all the multiplication. We're going to go do the multiplication and division at the same time in the order it comes, and the adding and subtracting at the same time in the order it comes. So technically, if I had a division come before a multiplication, I would do division first. So don't just do multiplication, then division, blah, blah, blah. My dear and Aunt Sally are hooked together. All right, so let's look at a problem. Okay, so actually, let me write that up here. So parentheses first. This problem, there's no parentheses, so I'll move to exponents. Here's an exponent. I have to do that first. Now, that negative has nothing to do with that exponent, right? If it did, it would be in parentheses like this. Now, that means that negative also gets the exponent. But the way it's written, the exponent only goes on the single sole thing it is written on. So 7 times 7 is 49. Now I would do multiplication and division, but there's not any, and then adding and subtracting. Signs are different, means minus. 49 minus 10 is 39. Keep the sign in front of the biggest one. Okay? Parentheses. Oh, this one has parentheses. I've got to do the stuff inside the parentheses first. Everything else is just going to stay the same. Okay. Signs are different. It means minus. 5 minus 3 is 2. Keep the sign in front of the biggest one. Okay, signs are different. This is a plus 9, right? Plus 9, because this minus is outside the parentheses, inside. Signs are different. It means minus. 12 minus 9 is 3. Keep the sign in front of the biggest. Anytime you get double signs, get rid of them. Signs are the same. It means a plus. So I'm just going to change that stupid double sign. Okay, now I'll do exponents. I still have a parenthesis left, but now that there's nothing to do inside the parenthesis, now that means, oh, that's just a parenthesis because it's telling me it's a multiplication problem. There's not any exponents, so multiplication and division. I'm going to go all the way across the problem, marking multiplication and division. There's only one. 2 times 2 is 4. The rest of the problem stays the same, and now all I have is 4 plus 3. Parentheses. Okay, so here's a parenthesis, but just like this one, there's really nothing to do inside that parenthesis. So it's just all going to stay the same. Okay, now inside this parenthesis, though, I've got a positive 7 and a negative 9. So signs are different, means minus. 9 minus 7 is 2. Keep the sign in front of the biggest number. Everything else stays the same. Everything else that I'm not working on at the moment just stays identical. Okay, so the parentheses are just holding numbers. There's no operation to do in there, so let's move to exponents. This is an exponent, this is an exponent, this has an exponent. Okay, remember what we talked about before about the exponent. Now this does say it is -4 times -4. So 2 negatives means that's positive. 4 times 4. Okay, same thing here. This is a negative times a negative. I've got 2 negatives, so it's going to be positive. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, I don't have to worry about negatives here. This is just 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. Okay, so now multiplication and division together. So I've got to do multiplication first. 16 times 4 is 64, and all that leaves is divided by 8. 64 divided by 8 is 8. Okay, no parentheses, but here's an exponent and here's an exponent. 8 times 8, everything else is going to stay exactly the same except the exponents. 2 times 2. Okay, so now multiplication and division. So I look across, oh, look at this. There's a division before a multiplication. Multiplication and division are hooked together. You do them in the order that they occur. Okay, so this is a minus. 16 divided by 4 is 4. And then times 4 minus 3. Everything else, except for the little piece that you did, stays the same. Okay, I'm not through with multiplication and division yet, so I'm still working on the multiplication, right? Right here. Now, so I've got 64 minus 4 times 4 is 16 minus 3. Okay, now that there's no multiplication and division left, adding and subtracting. So I'm just going to go across the problem. 64 minus 16. If we don't know what that is, it's fine to come down here and see what is 64 minus 16. Right? 14 minus 6 is 8. 5 minus 1 is 4. So 48 minus 3, 45. Okay, so our order of operations. Be sure and let me know if you need anything.